Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Disney retrospective 100 Years of Wonder. We are here at number 17 this week, talking about the 1961 movie, 101 Dalmatians. This has been an interesting one to rewatch. I've actually rewatched this twice in preparation for this. I thought it'd be a one and done, but maybe I didn't give it a fair enough shake last week when I was prepping for this review. So a couple of hours ago, I watched it again. And we have plenty to talk about. There's a lot going on with the behind the scenes in this one. Not an excessive amount, but sort of like a lot of firsts for the company and kind of a new way of animating things, which we'll definitely see in the next few Disney films, which are completely different to what's come before. We've already got a comment, which hasn't appeared. I don't know why comments immediately don't appear on the stream. Like, when they keep coming in, they eventually appear in, like, the little corner of the screen. But Brian Emery says, I love 101 Dalmatians. It was a good movie. I wish there was an actual world in Kingdom Hearts. Wanted to fight Cruella de Vil. Well, Kingdom Hearts, we have had this discussion in the lead up to this, as we do every week, as we always do. Not really more than a couple of days goes by before we start talking about Kingdom Hearts. And yeah, we were talking about the whole 101 Dalmatians thing. They're a collectible in the first game. I don't know if they reappear in any of the other ones, but in Traverse Town they've got the Dalmatians house. So I actually think that's in continuity with this. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen they did a sequel, didn't they, in like the early 2000s, as they did like the direct-to-video sequels were everywhere. It was like Patch's London Adventure or something like that, and I can't remember if they'd moved house in that one, because the end of this film they say, you know, we've got so many puppies, we'll make a Dalmatian plantation and we're going to buy a bigger place. I actually can't remember if they're living in the same place in the sequel, but I like to think that that bigger house, that bigger place, is the house that we find them living in Traverse Town. That's what I want to imagine.
There's a lot of rooms in that.
Yeah. They would have probably had to have gotten some kind of like gummy ship and flown to a completely different reality. But then again, they live in London, and Neverland is well, Neverland itself isn't set in London, but Peter Pan is set in London. So how are they different worlds? Because Big Ben and 101, they would have had to have moved. They would have had to have moved to a different planet. I don't know, but that's what I like to believe.
I still think the collectibles in the next one should be the experiments from Lilo and Stitch, all 628.
Yeah.
Oh, 628.
Shit, that's a lot of collectibles.
Yeah.
But we do have the power of the PlayStation 5 now, so I think we can.
Yeah, but remember with the Dalmatians, they did like you found puppies 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do you know what I mean? They could do that, like you found experiments like 1 to 20, like because you never see them. But then every now and then, one you see in the series, you fight as bosses, and that they collect them. Something like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, playing Kingdom Hearts 1, looking at that again with the collectibles, I'm like, what sick motherfucker is like throwing 3 puppies into a chest and locking it and keep them in there for like an indeterminate amount of time until Sora
in the belly of a whale.
It's like, well, Pongo, Perdita, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. The good news is we found all 101 puppies, or 99 puppies, I guess. The bad news is that more than half of them are dead. Like, here are their bodies. Sorry. Anyway, that's a very dark tone to begin a wholesome Disney review on a rather enjoyable Disney movie, which is 101 Dalmatians. Can you remember the history on this one when you watched it for the first time? Did you enjoy it loads as a kid, or?
I don't remember what it. I went into this time thinking it was going to be brand. Let's say brand new. I'd never watched it, but like very didn't remember a thing. I surprisingly remembered a lot. I remember the car that the two dudes drove in. What were their names?
Horace and Jasper.
That's it. I remember the car they drove in very, very well. I remember the two of them. I remember them basically being Rocky and Muggsy, and you know what I mean. And you know, like the two dudes from Home Alone, like they were very. You know, you got like the fat one and you got the skinny one. I remember them being. I remember them very well. I remember the way Cruella was. I remember quite a lot of it. It was really, really weird, to be fair. But I was just saying before how it's a very background movie. I think it didn't stand out to me as a kid, but watching it again, I remembered it going, oh, I remember this, but it was so backgroundy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I had exactly the same thing. By the way, we've got Carl Roberts in the comments. That, again, as I said, like, comments now all of a sudden appear on the screen. But how you doing, man? Hope you're keeping well. Hope you're doing good. But yeah, I had exactly the same thing with this movie earlier this week. Now, growing up, I watched the shit out of this movie, and in a similar way, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when we did the reviews on Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, how there were two versions of those films that I had at my disposal, basically, and depending on how I was feeling any day of the week.
Just like there are two versions of Van Halen with David Lee Roth and Sam
there we
Hagar.
go. Oh, you started early with the Van Halen references tonight. Okay, we got it out of the way. That's fine. We've got one. We've got one. But yeah, so like Alice in Wonderland, I've mentioned there was the late 90s live action version, which I enjoyed watching, and then there was the animated Disney one, which I enjoyed watching, and it really just depended on what my mood was like on the day, which version that I'd pick. Similar with Peter Pan, there was Hook, which I watched a lot, and then there was the animated one. And then with this one, you had like the really, really cool, was it like the 1996 or 1997 live action version that came out, the first live action version of 101 Dalmatians that we had, with Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil. And actually, did she get like an Oscar nomination for that, for like Best Supporting Actress or something? I feel like she got an Oscar nomination for that. And she's hammy as all hell, and she was a fantastic Cruella de Vil. And I remember that it's been a while since I've watched it, and I haven't watched it since I was a kid, but I really enjoyed that live action version. And I actually think I probably watched that version more than I did the animated one. I still really enjoyed the animated one. I watched it quite a lot. I loved Horace and Jasper. I thought they were really funny, especially like the whole chaotic ending with the car chase where Cruella, she's got like the crazy demonic look in her eyes, which we always look ahead at like Disney movies that are coming up and saying, oh, they used this part from this, or maybe this character was an inspiration for this character. It's been a while since I've watched it, so I don't want to say this is 100% true, but when we get to the first Rescuers movie, and you've got Madame Medusa, I swear to God there's a moment where she's like crazily driving a car, and they recreate that like close zoom in shot where she's got like the demon eyes and she's like frantically driving. I swear they do that again. But we'll find out in a few weeks' time when we get there, but I remember that being a thing.
I do feel like there's inspiration from the Nanny and Mrs. Potts. I feel like they're very similar.
Yeah.
Very, the look of them, the sound of them, the way they are as well. I feel like there's extreme similarities.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And even in the animation, this was at a point where Disney, they were trying to keep costs down. I never knew this until we did the review last week, but Sleeping Beauty lost the distributor a hell of a lot of money, just shy of $1 million at the time. And that was back in like 59, so that would have been like loads of money. It already is a load of money, but like back then. So the studio was kind of on its arse around this time, and there were the talks that it may have to shut down completely. So they were really trying to keep costs down. And I'm assuming that's going to be a thing that plays into the next few Disney films as well, because not only is there you could argue, drop in animation quality. You could argue that it's a different style, but comparing it to Sleeping Beauty, there's definitely a drop off in terms of the detail and what they were achieving before compared to this one. It definitely feels a lot cheaper, and you could argue that that's to the benefit of the style of this movie, but it is noticeable. But there's things where they'll reuse entire sections of soundtrack. There's a piece of music in this. The composer was George Bruns, and it's used identically in Jungle Book. I think there's a couple of musical cues where it's almost like they lifted the music completely. There's animation sequences that are constantly reused in this film. There's one where Cruella de Vil's sort of like driving past side on, like looking out the window. That's used multiple times throughout the film, which I noticed. But also how characters move. There's like entire animated sequences that get repeated throughout movies. I think the biggest offender of that is in Sword in the Stone, and then that's repeated for like Mowgli's character model in Jungle Book, and I know that a lot of character models and movements are used in Robin Hood as well. So we're definitely kind of entering an era where I guess they're trying to cut corners a little bit. I still really like all the films that I just mentioned, but I think this is the one where it started. And there's definitely a shift in terms of the feel of the movie compared to a lot of the ones that have come before. And I know that was a cause for concern with Disney, is that he felt with this one, in the art direction of the film, they were losing what had made those previous movies great, like the fantasy element, the really rich, individually framed inked detail and the line detail and everything. He felt like they were losing that a lot with this movie, so he had his reservations about it.
The thing is, I really, really like the animation. I really like the art style. I thought it was, because it was different, I think because it looked very old fashioned, and it was very Looney Tunes. Like there was a lot of, I really really enjoyed it. I really liked the art style, and I liked how it looked. In a lot of ways, lower budget. I really liked the look of it, and it made also like, for instance, the house was like a messy looking house. It made it look really cool. So
Mhm.
I really liked the design of everything.
Yeah, it's different. I think it works for this film definitely. And as I say, the options were, if they, well, they just didn't have the money to spend. Like they couldn't risk another failure like Sleeping Beauty, because if they just poured all that money into a film that wasn't successful, that would have been it. That would have been that Walt Disney Animation Studios, as we know it, would probably have ended at 101 Dalmatians, and we'd be done. So if it was the choice of, do we halve the budget and go for a slight, like a cheaper art direction, and just it's quicker to make, it's cheaper, it's more cost effective, or the alternative is that we lose Disney Animation Studios, then of course I want to go for the first option. So, but I think it works for this one. I definitely think it works for this one, and it is an art style that's going to stick around for at least until, I want to say until Rescuers, maybe. I've in my mind, I feel like Fox and the Hound is a little bit more detailed, but then I think of that and I'm like, well, Black Cauldron's got that similar kind of rougher edged design, sketchy outline, so maybe it's all the way up until that point. But this made a lot of money. I didn't realize how successful this movie was at the time that it came out. So in its original theatrical run, it made 14 million domestically, and it was the eighth highest grossing film of the time of that year. And it said, and now I don't know if this was back then. I was mentioning this to you before we went live. It says that it's the highest grossing animated film when reissues of films are not counted. And I don't know if that meant up until that point, up until 1961 when this was released, or if that's still including today. Because if that's the case, then that's insane. And then a little bit further on, it says that with counting reissues, the film has grossed 303 million worldwide. And when it's adjusted for inflation, it's the 12th highest grossing film in American box office history, and the second highest grossing animated film globally. So I don't know if this has been updated in a while. When you see things like the newer version of Lion King that they did, which was CGI animation, so technically that's an animated film, and you've got the likes of Frozen, which make well over $1 billion at the box office. Yeah, maybe adjusted for inflation, maybe this is the second highest grossing animated film, but that's insane. I did not know that this film was that financially lucrative. It's mad. It did well enough to get the live action remakes. You had the 90s one. I forget which year it came out. Was it 97? Then you had a sequel to that, which was 2000. What was it? 102 Dalmatians, which I think came out around 2000 or the early
Cruella.
2000s. Apparently there was a TV series in the 90s, which I don't even remember anything about that. You have the direct-to-video sequel released in 2003, Patch's London Adventure. And then according to this, when I found that there was the that Alice in Wonderland kids show that had come out within like the last couple of years. I don't even remember which one it was. We talked about it on that review. Apparently there was another 101 Dalmatians series that came out in 2019. Really fairly recent, I guess.
That was 100. What was it called? 100 Dalmatian Street. 101
Yeah,
Dalmatian
Street. Yeah, I don't know anything about this thing.
I only found out briefly about that, but there was also Cruella, wasn't there? With Stone.
Yeah, with Emma Stone, which I still haven't seen actually. That came out in 2021. I remember people. I mean, the competition's not great, is it? When you've got the other live action remakes that came out, but reviews were quite high for that Cruella film. I think I still haven't watched it. Maybe I'll check it out at some point. But I was kind of hard done by the live action remake, so I just stayed away from it. And Glenn Close was so good as Cruella as well. So I don't know if it was another one of those like Maleficent where it was, oh no, Cruella's just misunderstood, and this is her tragic backstory, and this is why she wanted to skin 100 Dalmatian dogs for a fur coat.
You can't be misunderstood and want to skin dogs. I can understand. I mean, I hated Maleficent because of what they did to her, but she's she's got magic powers. It's like, okay, she's misunderstood. This woman wants to skin dogs. You can't have a misunderstood woman wanting to skin dogs.
No, absolutely not.
Give me a valid reason why she would want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do it.
Brian Emery says in the comments, though, I've only just seen this comment now, but I guess we've kind of answered his question. He says, "Have you seen Cruella? I thought it was good." Yeah, no, I heard a lot of people said it was good. I think it was nominated for, I think it was costume, wasn't it? Probably costumes. I think it was nominated at the Academy Awards that year. But Emma Stone's a great actress. I'm sure she played Cruella well, and as I said, it's probably a film that's on the back burner. I'm just trying to. I'm enjoying my time going back to these animated ones, and I want to kind of stay away from modern live action Disney. But maybe I'll check it out at some point because I did hear it was meant to be good. So suffice it to say, 101 Dalmatians as a property, as a name, has had quite a legacy, and it's been around, and it's still, it's still going around all these years later too. The big thing with this movie, we've already kind of touched on it already, is the animation style. And Sleeping Beauty was the last Disney film, as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure, because technology moves on, was the last film to be individually hand inked, which added so much more time to production and so much more cost as well. I can't even imagine doing that. Every single individual frame and like colouring it, that would be absolutely mental.
Well,
And
wasn't
go on, sorry.
wasn't Cruella? I was going to say, wasn't she I believe the only animated solely animated by one person or something?
Well, I don't know if that was the first time that had ever been done, but yeah, Cruella was
Yeah.
animated by one person, because I think they had like a team of animators, obviously, and usually they would have someone who was like the chief animating director of a particular character. But I still don't know if they had multiple people working on those characters. But yeah, they had one person working on it, and I think he worked very closely with the voice actress as well, and she probably came in and she added like a lot of physicality to the role and everything, and that would have very much helped the animations, because yeah, we'll get on to Cruella in a minute, but she is fantastic in this. She's so much fun, like the voice and the mannerism, the look, the personality and everything. But this was the first one to be completely done using Xerox animation, and it halved the budget. It really, really added to the quick turnaround of this movie. So, as I said, before that, individual cells were hand inked, but with this one, they could directly transfer the artist drawings onto transparent animation cells. And not to mention that, but just the sheer number of Dalmatian puppies they have on screen at one moment, it just halved that time completely. It would have added a lot more money and a lot of time to the production if they'd have used original, older style animation techniques within this film. So, as I say, if it meant that they could get it done quicker and it kept the lights on in the studio and it kept it going, I'm fine with that.
They didn't
and
use real puppies in the live action, did they?
Yes, some were animatronics in close-ups, I think, but they used real ones, yeah.
Well, no, but do you know not exactly how many, but were there a few, or was there one, or was there?
Oh, in the live action one, I have no idea. They're probably more than one. In some.
But I didn't know if it was one and multiplied it. They did like a.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe for some like faraway shots, but no, for the most part. I need to go back and rewatch that. Like, legitimately, it's been years since I've seen that movie, so I do need to go back and watch it. But as far as I know, they used a lot. I don't know if they used 101. Probably not. They probably used some tricks of the trade. Or do they say never work in filmmaking, never work with children or animals or something? Can't even imagine that, working with 101 Dalmatian puppies on screen. Be crazy.
They're probably mirrors.
But now I'm looking at this, it's making me kind of, because I really miss hand-drawn animation. I've gone on record saying that loads, and I still feel that way now. It wouldn't even be so bad if like films were still getting made like that, and I guess in some ways you're getting that with some Studio Ghibli movies like The Boy and the Heron that came out recently. As far as I know, that's hand-drawn, but it still looks kind of digital enhanced here and there. But I do really think it's a dead art form now, and it really makes me upset. I kind of feel that way with stop-motion animation, but even with that, you have Aardman Studios that are keeping it going, and Leica Studios as well, which are keeping that going. But there's not really many companies out there doing animation.
Do you know what I compare this to, actually? What it reminds me of that I've just thought now. Do you remember the movie with the bear? And it's like set in like a snow, like I swear it's set in like the winter time. It's like a bear and then this girl that's like this blonde doll, and they're thrown out in the trash at like winter or.
I don't remember.
That's a movie. It's a really good. Like, I remember watching it as a kid about 50 times. I don't remember the name of it. I just remember they were like dolls and they were like toys thrown out into the trash, and they had to like make their way through the world, and it was wicked. But it's the same kind of animation, but I can't remember what it was called. So, but
What hand
it was a
drawn
bear.
anime? I don't remember that. I don't
Yeah,
remember
it was
that at
great. It was
all.
like a proper 90s. There was a bear. There was a doll with like blonde hair, and they were like best friends. And yeah,
If anyone
it was
knows what
sweet.
Dale's talking about, please list it off in the comments.
Yeah,
Because
I
no,
would
I
love
don't
to
know
know
that
the
one.
name as well, because it was kind of depressing and it's really cool. But I would love to know the name of it because it's great. But I have no idea what it's called.
Because I watched a lot of animated stuff growing up in the 90s, and no, that one must have slipped past my radar. But
Well, I watched it a few times.
I was thinking with this, like, you know, the change, how technology adapts, and we're leaving sort of hand. Well, it's still hand drawn, but the hand inked animation and the fluidity of that, we're leaving that behind, and we're moving to Xerox because it's cheaper. We can get the films out quicker. It's more cost effective. I guess that's kind of an example of how now we've switched from hand drawn animation, which is a lengthy process and it's comparatively a lot more expensive, and now we've got just everything's in computer generated imagery. Everything's like CGI with like modern Disney, you know, like Tangled. Well, Chicken Little was the first one to do it, I guess, but you know, Tangled, Moana, every new thing that Disney makes, basically, because it's a lot quicker, it's a lot cheaper. Do I like it as much? No. And that's where I kind of stand with this one, is that I think it works for this movie, and I still love Robin Hood, and I get used to the animation style and growing up with it, but I think watching these in sequence, and this time reading about each individual film and what goes on behind the scenes, and because I love Sleeping Beauty so much, and we mentioned this last week in our review, we were blown away by the animation in that. It was so detailed, it was so rich, and they put so much of the pre-production went into getting those backgrounds and the characters and the art style looking as good as it did. And having that fresh in my mind from last week and then dropping to this, it's a distinct drop in quality, I think, in terms of actually what's on the screen. But the thing that I love about this film is the story. I think it's a great story. I think the characters are realised very well. And I really like the voice acting in it as well. For, you know, like Pongo, he's the first voice that we hear in the film. And I actually think the beginning of the film is probably my favourite bit. The bit where Pongo really wants to try and get, you know, he wants his owner Roger to find a mate. He wants a mate as well, so he takes them to the park. He's looking out the window. I love that moment where the dogs match the visuals of the owner as well. Like the owners are kind of matched to the type of dog that they own. That's quite fun. And I just think Pongo's got a great voice. Let me just find the guy who did Rod Taylor. I think he was like big in radio at the time. You could when I found that out, I was listening to his voice. You could definitely tell he's got a radio voice. But that whole initial meeting at the park where he tries to get the attention of Perdita and they both fall in the river, Roger and Anita, I really like that moment. I thought that was really sweet. I like the rest of the movie fine. As you said, it's kind of a background movie, sure, but that like first act is probably my favourite, I would say.
The Forgotten Toys. That's what it's called. I just googled it.
Hang on, let me Google this to see if it like sparks any kind of the Forgotten Toys.
That's what I was just doing. I get the Forgotten Toys. It's just I don't know why.
I have
but the
never watched this. I have never watched.
Have you not?
This. No.
Now I'm looking at it. It's very different, but for some reason it just reminded me of it. I don't know why. I think it's the colouring. I don't think the actual drawing. I think it's the colouring of it. It's similar to me. But yeah, that's what came into it. It was
sort of like a Raggedy Ann kind of looking doll.
Yeah.
With a teddy bear.
I remember loving it when I was growing up. It was really depressing. It's great.
No, never seen that.
When did it come out? 1997. So 4-year-old me was loving the depressing shit.
As I say, a lot of the kids' films that we watched growing up, like they didn't play. They were dark. They were depressing. Land Before Time. Lord have mercy. I can't watch that.
What, because of Ducky? How many times have we mentioned this?
Next to Van Halen, I think you get a Ducky reference in every single one, for the love of God. Oh, boy. Anyway. Yeah, so I guess before we go into like more behind the scenes on this, any talking points that you want to dive into? Characters, scenes, stuff that you remembered?
My favourite is, you know, when they're watching TV Not the one with the Hitler guy, because there's a part where they're watching the crime show and the dude got a Hitler mustache. Not that one. It's when they're all around TV and it's just dogs and
Yeah,
you've
it's
got
Thunderbolt, isn't it? They're watching the TV show.
that.
Yeah.
I remember that so well. I remember watching it thinking, I remember the whole thing with the dog playing dead and the dude that looks like the cowboy dude. He looks like every sort of like Looney Tunes like cowboy kind of guy that isn't Yosemite Sam. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? I just remember him. I remember the whole thing. I remember Lucky at the TV screen, and everyone being like, "Oh, get down, we can't see." I remember the whole thing, and I think that one is just great. And seeing all the puppies together, I think that's my favorite, and it's one stands out. And I don't know why I remember it so well, but I almost knew it word for word. I was like,
Yeah.
"How do I remember this?" It was weird, but no, that's definitely the top for me.
Yeah, no, I love that scene too, and I love the little details where you've got the fat one who's always hungry, and he keeps turning around like, "Mom, mother, I'm
Reminds me of me.
hungry, I'm hungry," and then oh, what's the other one? It's Patch, isn't it? Where he's like, "I'd like to tear his gizzard out," and
Yeah.
she's like, "Patch, where did you learn such language? Certainly not from your mother." And she turns to
What I
Pongo.
love is then Pongo just smiles.
Yeah, yeah.
He doesn't even deny it.
I really love the dynamic with Pongo and Perdita. Just the voice actors, like, it's weird to say because they're dog characters, but like there's a real chemistry there. Like the patriarch of the family and the caring mother side. They work brilliantly off each other. But yeah, I like that scene. Canine Crunches. My God, that jingle came back to me. I love that. That's like probably unironically my favorite song in the film, which I found out from reading the Wikipedia thing. The voice of that, that very high pitched like canine crunches or whatever it is, it's the voice of Anastasia Tremaine from 1950s Cinderella. I didn't know that. So but yeah, there were a lot of little moments that I remembered from. It's probably before the film started on the VHS cassette tapes. You'd have like trailers for the Disney films that were released on video as well. And 101 Dalmatians was at the beginning, like the trailer for it was at the beginning of loads of them. And I remember a lot of individual clips. I remember the bit with Sergeant Tibbs where he's on the horse and he's like, "Fire 1!" and he like kicks Horace. He's like, "Fire 2!" and he kicks Jasper. So that came back to me. There's the bit with the colonel with the sheepdog where he's trying to run on the ice and he's like, "On the rubble!" and then he like falls over. And it's just little moments like that were sprinkled all the way through, which came back to me. So yeah, it was an enjoyable watch. It was a nice trip down memory lane, but I think maybe watching these in sequence, and maybe just because I'm a lot older now, a lot more sentimental, I think I am favouring the traditional fairy tale.
It
Disney
reminded me
films
as
rather than these
well
ones.
of Cats and Dogs.
Yeah, you mentioned this before we went live. That is a film I have not watched in a long time. Cats and Dogs.
Yeah, that was again. It was next to that and Hook, the two videos I always had as a kid. I don't know where they came from because, like, I just always they were just there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like my first cat when I was growing up was there before I was born. It's like they were just came with my life. They were there and introduced to me when I was born. It's the same thing. It's like those two and my white cat. They were like the three things that were there when I was born. But yeah, it reminded me of that because obviously the dogs on the whole, not just dogs talking to each other, but the whole, Scotland Yard dogs and doing things and, on the phone, all that. Like it was the whole concept of having these dogs do things that were like for good. You know what I mean? And they were kind of almost like detectives kind of thing. Like the whole concept. It was interesting to see again, to be fair.
Yeah, the whole Twilight Bark sequence is quite interesting. I mentioned to you actually when I rewatched it last week that I said look out for the Lady and the Tramp references in there. And I asked you before we went live, and I don't think you caught them, but it's just a couple of character models that you see here and there. The Jack, the Scottish Terrier that's in Lady and the Tramp, there's an exact design of him. It's like they use the same character model, the same animation. Apparently it's a different character though, because I checked and he's called Scotty. But it's the same, exactly the same character model for that, and I think he barks up the piping, and then it like echoes out of there. But there's a pet shop that you see, and they've got do you remember like the bulldog in The Pound, who was like had the Cockney voice? You see him in the front window, and also Peg. He's a tramp. Like you see her in the pet shop window as well. So how they got from the suburbs of America all the way over to London, I don't know. But there's a mid story there between Lady and the Tramp somewhere and this one.
Interesting.
I don't know when this is
There's
meant
a
to
lot
be.
of that though, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm guessing this
Throughout
is also
Disney.
meant to be set in the decade that it came out, right? Yeah, so it's set in 1958. Now, Lady and the Tramp, wasn't that like turn of the century that was set?
Yeah, that was earlier.
So it can't be the same one, but it is. So it'd be like a 60-year-old dog or something, which would be mental. But yeah, I guess it's like
That's
a fun
never
little
happened.
Easter egg, and there are quite a lot of Easter eggs like that in a lot of Disney films. So yeah,
Why are they called Easter eggs? That's the question I have.
yeah, I don't. Well, I guess
Is it because you have to find them, like when you hide Easter eggs as a kid?
I guess it could be that, like an Easter egg hunt. Yeah, you have to like. Yeah, I was gonna say it's like something hidden inside something, but there's not always something inside.
Isn't
an
that a
Easter egg,
babushka doll?
hang on, what? Hang on, why are film
Technically,
Easter
isn't that a babushka
eggs?
doll as well? Something hidden inside something.
Well, it'd be like a Kinder egg, I guess.
They're illegal in America though.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this is the person that came up with the term, but yeah, no, you're exactly right. It says Steve Wright, an Atari manager at the time, loved the idea of hidden surprises in games because they reminded him of waking up on Easter morning and hunting for Easter eggs. So the hidden features became known as Easter eggs. There you go.
See,
Now
there
I
you
know.
go.
Let's see who said this. Who said the show isn't fun and educational at the same time? I've just learned something, so that's cool. Let's go into a little bit of the behind the scenes with this one. Then there's not an excessive amount to say, so I'm going to try and keep it as brief as I possibly can. The book was written by Dodie Smith, and that was published in '56. And within the November of the following year, in '57, Disney had acquired the rights to the film for, I think it was like $25,000 after quite lengthy negotiations. So they were pretty on this thing, and it was going to be the next animated feature after Sleeping Beauty, which was still in production at the time. I think they had around 2 years left on the production for that thing. So I mean, when production started on this, I don't know if they went straight into like the animation phase of it. Probably not. It was probably still, they were ironing out the story and everything, because I wonder if they knew at that point that they were going to go the way of the Xerox as they were still working on Sleeping Beauty, or if that was a decision which came much later when they started animating it. But around this time, actually, Disney was kind of losing interest in animated films. This was mentioned last week, and I don't know if it's just how long Sleeping Beauty was in production, but he wouldn't show up quite a lot of times. He'd come in if they needed him, but he kind of delegated to certain people and said, you know, I trust your judgment, go and do your thing. He was working on Disneyland, and I think he was working on a lot of live action films at the time, and as he was getting older, he was just losing interest in animated films. He still showed up for story meetings for this one, but there was definitely a waning interest there. And I've often wondered why that was. I don't know if it felt like, well, I started off in animation, that's all I've done, and I want to build a bigger empire. I want to do something else. I want to challenge myself in a new direction. There could be a lot of things at stake, but I think deep down, although he was losing interest, that's kind of where his bread and butter was. That's where his heart lay, because he didn't want to see the company go under. He still believed in the animated films and wanted them to release them because that's where the company was started from, was animation. So, and there's a story in a minute which I'll get into, where the lead, I think it was the animation director, had a bit of an argument with Disney, and then Disney kind of smoothed it over right before he passed away, which is quite a sweet story. So I'll get onto that in a minute. But this was the first Disney film that was, the screenplay was solely written by one person who was uncredited. The story was by Bill Peet, and he wrote the screenplay as well, which apparently he wrote by hand. He never learned how to use a typewriter, so when he wrote the initial screenplay, because Disney wanted a full screenplay done first before they even did anything else. And yeah, first Disney film to be written by one person. Usually it was quite a big collaborative effort. I've never read the original story, which you're probably going to get used to me saying on a lot of these Disney films. So, but it was given the blessing by Dodie Smith, the author, who, when she saw illustrations of the characters and what they were doing to change the story, she actually said that she believed that they'd improved upon her story. a lot of it was just cutting down the amount of characters, merging two characters into one. For example, there's two nannies in the book. There's Nanny Cook and Nanny Butler, who for the movie they just condensed into the one character. There's apparently the puppy's birth mother and then an adoptive mother. And the adoptive mother was called Perdita, and again for this movie they just merged it into one character as the mother character. And just a lot of things like that, really.
Do you know who did all the dog barks?
I do not.
Donald Duck.
Oh, really? What,
yeah.
all of them?
The original voice. Yeah, the original voice of Donald Duck does all the barking dogs. He's uncredited, but he does all the sound.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that. I assumed it was just like either the voice actor playing that character or... Yeah, no, I didn't know that.
That's Clarence Nash.
He
does all. He's uncredited, but he does all the random like dog barking.
Well, there's a lot in this movie because the Twilight bark sequence.
He's everywhere.
Yeah. God, could you imagine him like driving to work and just preparing for that role? Just how many different dog barks can I do?
He does quacks. But the thing, who is it? Is it the chick that plays the nanny? She is known as the woman of 100 voices. And that's weird because isn't Mel Blanc the dude that plays like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, all that kind of stuff? He is the complete opposite because he's a dude and he's the man of 100 voices for Warner Bros., the complete opposite to Disney. And she's known as the woman of 100 voices for Disney. And I think that's quite cool, to be fair.
I love voice actors like that, where they could have like the smallest part in something, but they have loads of credits to their name. I think that's just a great achievement when they can do that. Voice actors are so great as well. I mean, like as you get into like later ones, like the voice of Tigger and Winnie the Pooh, and like he's done loads as well, which we'll see as we get into like the later ones as well.
That's one that I like live action of. Christopher Robin, I do like that.
The Ewan McGregor movie?
Yeah.
Oh,
I like that.
I wasn't too keen on that one, I must admit.
I watched it 3 times in a row.
Oh my god!
But honestly, I actually did. It was I thought it was great. It was wonderful. I was very happy. I was very content. I felt like a child again. It was great.
I like that it was. I guess that it was a slightly different take. They were actually doing something.
That's probably
different
why
with
it
the
was.
Winnie the Pooh character,
It was good.
But
because it wasn't a shot for shot. Like, this is the same thing. Good. Why are we doing it? Like, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, because Disney would just have fucked it up royally if they had have done like the classic retelling of it. But yeah, just looking at the other voice talents in this. So Rod Taylor, who had radio experience before, was the voice of Pongo. I think he's just got a great voice. I really like Pongo as a character in this. He's probably one of my favourites. There was a voice actress called Lisa Daniels, who was originally the voice of Perdita, but after recording about a third of her lines, she got married and moved to New York, so they recast her. And we had Kate Bauer as Perdita. I love all the voice work in this. All the voice work's great. One of my favourites, and I didn't know this voice actor voiced both of these characters. And then when I read it, I was listening out for it, and I kind of noticed it. J. Pat O'Malley, who was one of Disney's favourite voice actors to work with, he was the voice of the Colonel. And when we get to Jungle Book, he's the voice of Colonel Hathey. So that very, posh, British, regimented, on the double, and I love Colonel Hathey when we get to Jungle Book. He's one of my favourite characters in it. But he also did the voice of Jasper, which I didn't know. And then I listened out for it because, Jasper's like proper Cockney. Upstairs, downstairs kind of thing.
How many spots do you reckon are in the movie?
How many spots? Oh, God.
Yeah.
A lot.
A lot. Yeah. I don't know. I've just thought that. I wonder how many spots are actually used in the film. How many times they have to draw circles?
Well, if they were doing it in the traditional method, that would have been mental. Yeah. Animating all of those and moving them all across the screen one by one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what else have we got. Okay, let's talk Cruella. Let's talk my favorite character in this film. I knew that I always loved the character of Cruella, and watching this again was an absolute joy. I love characters like with really big personalities. That foppish kind of attitude, and when she just barges in. I love when Nanny goes to open the door, but she throws it open anyway. It's such a great entrance, that character. You've got Roger playing her theme song as she walks in, trying to drown her out. He's got like the trombone, he's like bashing away at the piano. and just that Anita, darling, and, that kind of like posh British accent that she's putting on. I think that she modelled the character off a lot of actresses at the time. I think Betty Davis was one that comes to mind with that really larger than life kind of personality. Later on, they said that there was an actress called Tallulah Bankhead who she based the character on, but the voice actress of Cruella de Vil, Lisa Davis, said that wasn't intentional. That's just what people have taken, that they were both Americans and they put on this like British voice. But what a great voice acting performance. I didn't know this as well, that Lisa Davis was the narrator for Cinderella. At the very beginning, where you get the prologue and you get the preamble, that was the same voice actress. I didn't know that. But she was big in radio at the time, I think, Lisa Davis. But I think when she did the audition for Cruella, she got given it on the spot. And quite rightly so. She's brilliant. I love the look of the character, how she's this very skinny, emaciated kind of woman, but she looks so large in like the in the fur coat that she's got. And then later on, when we get to Emperor's New Groove, I was really reminded of the character of Yzma.
Yeah.
Oh God, what's the name? Eartha Kitt's character from the villain from that movie, basically. Very similar kind of mannerisms to her in terms of, you know, her appearance and the look and everything. So I wonder if Cruella de Vil was a basis for that character later on. But I was kind of hit with that a little bit.
She reminds me of you know, the main witch from Witches, the Roald book.
Oh, the Grand High Witch. Yeah.
Yeah. Reminds me of that as well.
Yeah, just really, really big, commanding personality. She's great. I love the scene where she just backhands Jasper and Horace, and she throws the bottle of alcohol in the fireplace and it explodes, and just how crazed and demented she gets by the end of the movie. And the initial meeting with Anita, because does she say they were like childhood friends or like schoolmates or something?
They were, yeah.
And she comes in and she's just ridiculing the house that she lives in and how she's living such a lowly lifestyle and how Roger's a useless piece of shit and he's like a talentless musician, and she's just completely berating her.
And then he makes a load of money for a song about her.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Speaking of the music, there's not a load of songs in this one, but the music itself was done by George Bruns. Well, it says the songs were written by George Bruns and Mel Levin, but there's only sort of like 3 main songs in the film. So the 3 main songs, you've got Cruella de Vil, Canine Crunches, and Dalmatian Plantation. Apparently there were meant to be a lot of other songs that were written for the film. The Sherman Brothers, who I think they were the ones who did the soundtrack to Jungle Book, I want to say. Fantastic songwriters, amazing. When we get to that film, all the songs in that are pretty great. They actually wrote a title song called 101 Dalmatians, but it wasn't used in the film. But apparently it has been released by Disney Records. I have never heard that song, though, so I'm going to have to check that one out to see how that one stacks up. But there was going to be a load of songs, apparently. There was going to be sort of like a Cockney chant called Don't Buy a Parrot from a Sailor that was going to be sung by Horace and Jasper at the DeVille Mansion. There was a second song called Cheerio, Bye-Bye, Toodaloo, Hip Hip, which was to be sung by the Dalmatian puppies as they make their way to London. And then there was another song called March of the 101, which was going to be sung as they're escaping from Cruella de Vil by van. There's a longer version of Canine Crunches out there and Dalmatian Plantation, which you can find on Disney Records, which I haven't checked out. But yeah, loads of songs that weren't used in the film.
I don't think the songs would have fit, to be fair. I don't think it would have fit the movie.
Same.
So...
and the songs that are in the film, well, Cruella de Vil's definitely the main one. It's the catchiest one. It's played multiple times throughout the film, and I really like the bluesy feel to it as well. Watching it again, I was reminded of the title sequence, where you've got like the spots moving around, and it's got like, well, it's the opening credits of the film. But that's like a really good sort of like fast jazz kind of song, which I really liked. Which
the opening credits for this was a lot different to the opening credits for a lot of all the others. I thought this was very unique. The very first kind of, I remember watching it thinking, this is different. Because a lot of them were, I mean, not samey, but like, obviously with the fairy tales, there was a lot of like the book opening. There was a lot of, like, it was very, like, it looked like a showpiece of like the curtain comes down kind of thing. And this was very different.
Yeah, no, I really like the title sequence, and as like when I fired the DVD up and it went straight into that, I was suddenly hit with like, oh god, I remember this. which was great. So I guess the most memorable song from the film is Cruella de Vil, and I suppose deep down that would be my favourite because it kind of is the main one. But when the Canine Crunchies advert came on, that little jingle, I was like, oh god, I remember this. I don't know, so I've been kind of like humming Canine Crunchies to myself for like the last few days, slowly driving myself insane with it. So
is it one of those, like, you know, when people say, if you could have wrote any song, would you pick that one?
Well, how about you? What would your favourite be? Is it Cruella de Vil? I guess you've only really got three to choose from with this film.
Yeah, I mean, it probably would be because it's the most memorable. But like you said, only three to choose from. So it feels weird saying that because it's kind of like, yeah, but it's not really anymore. So, but yeah, I would say that.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot to say on it.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I guess we're going to kind of have that with the next one too, because from what I can remember, there's only like a handful of songs in that, like maybe two or three. Two, I definitely can remember. Three, probably at a push. So I was just looking at the animation of this as well. We've already talked about the Xerox thing. It wasn't the first full animated film to do it, though. There was a film that came out a year prior to it called Goliath 2 in 1960, which used the whole process. But they showed it to Disney, and he gave it his approval. I don't know if he was kind of in the headspace. He probably just thought, oh, yeah, you know, do what you got to do with the whole Xeroxing thing. And apparently they took inspiration from British cartoonist Ronald Searle. I've never seen his style, but you said as you were watching the film, the art style reminded you of something. So I don't know if it was kind of British cartoons or something else, maybe.
It was very, I don't know, it's very Looney Tunes, which is, I think it's the whole, I don't know how to describe it, but it's kind of like the whole, you know, it's kind of similar to Sleeping Beauty in a way where the background is a lot lower quality than the actual stuff going on. And I think the thing is, when you have the house, it's like, obviously their house is a mess. You know, it just looks really cool rather than an actual messy house, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
So,
they used the same design for the backgrounds as well because they wanted to keep that uniform look to it, which I think definitely works, as you said, that kind of like messy, sketchy thing. And I guess we'll get that as well when we get to Sword in the Stone with Merlin's home. It's all very messy and cluttered when we initially see it, so it kind of works for that, I guess. So Ken Anderson was the studio's art director for the film, and when Disney was shown like a bunch of things that they were doing with the film, initially, you know, he said, yeah, use the Xerox thing, but after he was seeing the results, it says that Disney disliked the artistic look of the film and felt that they were losing the fantasy element of his animated films, and I can totally see that. As I said, after we're watching these in order, and we're coming hot off the heels of Sleeping Beauty, which had such stellar animation. I know they put a lot of work into the visuals of that, arguably more so than the story. And then coming to this one, there is a big drop-off. And when I think of Disney and going back to these traditional ones, I am thinking of the stellar animation from Snow White, Cinderella, you know, the fairy tale ones, even like Pinocchio and Fantasia and things like that. And comparing this film to that, it is a big drop-off in that regard, I think. But he really disliked the art style. And apparently in a meeting with the animation staff, when they were talking about the Xerox thing, he said, quote, "We're never going to have one of those goddamn things." And when he was talking about the art direction, he says that Ken's never going to be an art director again. And yeah, he was really angry about the processes that we're doing.
I wonder what you'd say about the art style now.
Well, as I said, like, I'm going to go into the quote in a minute that Ken Anderson talks about in the last meeting that he had with Disney before Disney passed away, when all was kind of forgiven. But as I said, because it kept the studio afloat, didn't it? Like, it kept going. They were in absolute dire straits with money and possibly even closing the animation studio down. And it was hugely successful. Whether Disney didn't like the animation or not, fundamentally, it was a very, very successful animated film that bailed them out of the shit. At least up until that point. I think they went through another financial crisis right when Black Cauldron came out, because that was a huge bomb as well when that came out. But yeah, Anderson, quite rightly, apparently took this really to heart, as I think anyone would. But then Disney eventually forgave him when he took his final trip to the studio in the late part of 1966. And this is a quote here from Anderson, who recalls in an interview, he said, he's talking about Disney here. He looked very sick. I said, "Gee, it's great to see you, Walt." And he said, you know that thing you did on Dalmatians? He didn't say anything else, but he gave me this look, and I knew that all was forgiven. And in his opinion, maybe what I did on Dalmatians wasn't so bad. This was the last time I ever saw him. Then a few weeks later, I learned he was gone. So, yeah, I don't know if Walt, at that point, if he knew that he wasn't long for this world and he was trying to make amends with everyone, or it clearly sounds like this had been on his mind since he said that and he regretted it. But I can see why Walt wouldn't like the design of the animation in this. I can totally see that, especially when they were really building that quality up from, you know, Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, all the previous ones that we've done, Sleeping Beauty, kind of peaking with that, and then there is a drop off in that new style. And maybe it is because of, like, the technology was advancing and the Xerox thing, and maybe just Disney just really didn't like this new way of doing things. Maybe he was a traditionalist in that way. But I think it works for this. It did kind of hit me quite hard. You know, it's not widescreen either. That was a big thing for me. Lady and the Tramp and Sleeping Beauty, we had this, you know, beautiful... Well, with Sleeping Beauty, it was 70mm widescreen when it was initially released, and it looks incredible. Whereas this one, you're back to the 4:3 with the black bars at the side. So that was kind of a shift. But as I said, if it was between the company going bust and this, I'm totally fine with this. It was an enjoyable rewatch. I like a lot of the characters in there. The voice works great. But I didn't enjoy it as much as I remember when I did was a kid. And I don't know why. You said it best at the beginning when you said it's very much a background movie. And I felt that. But I think the story's good. I like the characters. I just don't know why this one didn't connect with me as much this time round. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's no Lady and the Tramp. I'll put it that way. It's, you know what I mean?
I like it more than Lady and the Tramp, I will say that. The animation in Lady and the Tramp's better than this, but I do prefer this, I think.
No, I prefer Lady and the Tramp. I mean, the story's good. It's got a good idea, but so Kill the Justice League, a good idea. You know, so...
Some ideas shouldn't be acted upon, really, should they?
Exactly.
Someone said Harley Quinn should shoot Batman in the face. Like, that's an idea. It's a fucking crap idea, but it's an idea.
It's like, it's one of those things where I think someone in the studio said that, and someone else in the studio should have got it and said, okay, we're going to put this idea over here on the fridge so everyone can see it, but we'll leave it there. Do you know what I mean? To make them feel good. That's what should
have you ever seen South Park the movie? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
Do you know the bit where Terrence and Philip are sat on the couch with Brooke Shields, and she's like, I farted once on the set of Blue Lagoon, and they just let it hang, and then he just slaps her to, like, shut the fuck up. It reminds, so, like, someone says, maybe we could have, like, Harley Quinn shoot Batman in the face. And there's just a silence then.
Yeah, oh no, that would, yeah, exactly. But to be fair, this movie, it's not bad. I don't dislike it at all. I just think I don't think it's ever one. It's not one I would never watch again because it is enjoyable, and it's one if I had to put it on or whatever. But it's not one I don't think if I ever watched it I'd ever go, oh my god, my opinion would ever change. It would always be kind of, yeah, that's cool. It's always going to be that to me, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'll say it's nice going back to all these movies though. It really is, because genuinely some of these I haven't seen since I was a pup myself, and I think this is probably one of those. Maybe I haven't watched this film since the 90s. I can't remember if it's been on TV at any point. I may have caught some bits. A few months ago, I think it was, the live action version was on, and I remember going downstairs and, like, watching a little bit of that, and I was like, I'm gonna have to rewatch that again at some point to see if that still holds up. But
I've watched the live action version.
You've never watched it?
The live action version, nope.
Oh, wow, okay. I'll send you a scene from it in a second. Glenn Close is fucking just hamming it up. She's chewing all the scenery, and she's having a great old time doing it. I
remember the constant advertisement for it, like the material for every time you put a video on it was constantly 101 Dalmatians. It just constantly, you saw Cruella de Vil over and over again. You know, it's like, I remember the advert really, really well for the Toy Story 2 game. It's like that. It's the kind of, like, it's always around. It's like, you know, when you had the first, like, Diamond Edition version of, like, well, not Diamond Edition version, that's completely wrong. Like, limited edition version of, like, Beauty and the Beast. Like, it's like those. There's certain adverts you just remember, and it's one of those. I always remember the constant promotion material. I remember the dogs. And suddenly, like, I think there was things like there was one of Dalmatians running, and then they would lose their spots randomly, or just something weird. Like I just remember just constantly seeing it over and over and over again. I've never actually watched it. No.
I remember going to the cinema to see the sequel, 102 Dalmatians, which came out 4 years after it. I think it was for like someone's birthday, and when I was growing up, like everyone's birthday was you'd go to the cinema to watch a movie, and then you'd go out to like Burger King or McDonald's afterwards for food. Like that was everyone's birthday.
Why don't we do that anymore? Why don't we do that anymore?
Well, probably because there's fuck all on at the cinema. That's a big thing. Like genuinely, the last time I went to the cinema was the back end of January, and that was a rescreening of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But in terms of like new releases, I guess it was Christmas Eve when I went to see Godzilla -1, which was a low budget Japanese made Godzilla movie, which was incredible, probably my favorite film of that year. But yeah, like
It's
months
dead.
are going by. Like Dune 2's out in I think like next week, which I want to go and see, but there's barely anything out. There's just nothing out.
Instead, what we did this year was we went to a club and went, it's really noisy in here, we should leave.
We're so old. We're so old.
Things change and it's not good.
Yeah, I saw my 30th and my 31st year in Pop World doing shots. By the way, thank you for those shots. They were much appreciated. So thank you for buying those at my birthday.
That was a good time. And then leaving, going, it's really loud in here.
Yeah, we're so desperately old. I'm just checking the 101 Dalmatians live action one to see if Glenn Close was nominated. Let me just have a look. Oh, okay. Glenn Close was nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Actress. It was nominated for BAFTA Award for Best Makeup and Hair. Was it nominated for anything at the Academy Awards?
There's a lot of people as well that dress like Cruella de Vil as well. There's a lot of people that I found out that have like in music videos stuff like that. They've taken a lot of inspiration from her, like her color scheme and everything. So I know she's one of the most popular, I think.
Yeah. I'm gonna send you a scene from that after we finish because yeah, you've got to check that out. The film's probably shit now if I watch it again, but I remember liking it. Oh, hang on.
It was a live action that was made before 2010, so it might be alright.
It was written by John Hughes. I didn't know that. Is this the John Hughes? Is this? Yes, this is the Breakfast Club's very own John Hughes. Oh shit, I didn't know that he wrote the film. Oh cool. Okay. Anyway, that'll do it for 101 Dalmatians, I think. Next week we will be talking about... This is an interesting one. I watched it a few times as a kid, but it didn't really have any staying power for me, so I'm hoping I turn around on it a little bit. The Sword in the Stone is our next one. That's going to be number 18. I remember one scene very vividly in this film, which is Madame Mim in her magical animal transformation fight with Merlin, and I don't really remember anything else about it, so that's going to be an interesting one to go back to.
Who's Madame M, though? Who's Madame M?
Madame M?
There's a person. There is a person, and I can't remember who it is. But it's a thing.
There's a band called Madame X. There's Madame Mim.
No, I know Madame Mim is.
There's Madame Web at the moment. Oof, Sony's.
Oh, Madame M. No, she's in Final Fantasy. That's it. I was going to say okay. I knew there was someone called Madame M. But you know, Merlin's actually based off a person though, like a real actual person,
like a real actual magical person.
Yeah, he was more. It was a lot. Because I did research him ages ago. He's a lot darker. He was more like kind of a bit like Nostradamus. Like he would prophesize really dark things. Like he was a bit like weird. He wasn't like this magician or anything or magic. He was just like a bit creepy and a bit. What's the word for when things are negative? Like dark, depressing. That kind, like I don't know that kind of thing. Like you know what I mean? In a cave and that kind of like he was based on that, which is quite cool.
I didn't know.
And he predicted that the world was going to end in 2012, so I guess he was wrong.
I mean, he probably ain't wrong. If you look at, depending on how you interpret his words, you probably ain't wrong.
Wow, the world ended long before that.
Everything's just gone to shit now.
I'd say around 2015.
Yeah, that was about it. 2015, that was the turning point. But we will be talking about more Disney films and going to places of wonder and nostalgia and talking all things Disney for a lot longer, which is going to be cool.
What Disney movie came out in 2015?
I'm going to have to check that. I'm not sure.
Because I'm just thinking.
Oh, okay. Well, the big one at the end of the year, well, it's not a Disney animated film, but it was Star Wars The Force Awakens with everyone's favorite.
There we go, that's why.
Disney animated classics. Let's see if there was one from that year. I can't recall what it would be. Or if indeed there was one that was released in 2015. 2015, yeah, there wasn't one in 2015, so the November of 2014 was Big Hero 6, and the March of 2016 was Zootopia.
Okay, Disney-wise, it was... I like Zootopia. Big Hero 6 was...
Oh, yeah, I keep forgetting, because, hang on, let me grab the DVD. This is jumping way too far ahead, but I always know it as Zootopia, but annoyingly in the UK we got a different fucking name for it, and it was called Zootropolis, and it just really annoys me because it's Zootopia. All the advertising for it was Zootopia, and everything I know was Zootopia, but yeah. Zootropolis for the UK. It's like that bullshit name change for the fifth Pirates of the Caribbean movie that came out, where it should be called Dead Men Tell No Tales, which is a great name for it because that's in the fucking ride and it's piratey. And then in the UK they called it some boring shit like Salazar's Revenge.
Yeah, that was weird.
I hate that shit. I think the reason that it got a name change in the UK was I think there is actually a zoo in I think it was somewhere like Denmark or something, somewhere in Europe that was called Zootopia. So they had to change the name for us into Zootropolis.
But it's not as bad as Harry Potter being Philosopher's Stone changed to Sorcerer's Stone because Americans wouldn't know what a philosopher was.
What a philosopher is.
It's like, okay, guys. It's like, we're going to dumb it down for you because you don't know what this is. Which is quite funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I think that will do it for us. Oh yeah, just over an hour. Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. Right, guys, thank you to everyone that's commented, everyone that's tuned in. Yeah, I need to create a playlist for this thing, by the way. I mean, we're 17 videos deep right now. I really should have a playlist for this, so probably by next week, expect there to be a nice little Disney playlist on my channel, because we're going to be here for a good few more weeks doing all these Disney films, so we're not going anywhere. We'll see you again next Monday, 8 PM the usual time, and we'll see you